here with Les and Steve, and they were involved in the 80s hardcore punk scene, of course, and they were just saying before that they both used to squat a lot. Where did you end up living in squats and that, and for how long?
Les can tell you that.
We ran for probably 4 years, I suppose, consecutive years of squatting it, and maybe 6 houses. Most memorable would be Charnwood Crescent in St Kilda.
Boathouse.
Yeah, and the Fairfield Boathouse, which was a bit of a hoot. We had our 21st birthday party there.
It was a really memorable squat. Like if anyone was to do a history of the Melbourne squatting scene in the 80s, you couldn't not do it without recognising the Fairfield Boathouse. It was an amazing squat, like in all sorts of ways.
I never squatted myself, but I went to quite a few squats in the 80s through the bands that I was involved with, like Depression and Vicious Circle and that. And I saw a lot of gigs in squats and bands playing their shows. It was great fun, hey?
It was a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of learning, you know?
I must say, I was never a squatter, but being a squatter, I mean, that mindset, I mean, were you on tenterhooks about, hey, the cops are going to raid us or the landlord's going to raid us tomorrow at 6 a.m. and kick us out? I mean, was that a nervous situation, squatting? Because I must say, I never did it, but you guys did it. Well, what was it like?
Every potential squat was a different sort of scenario. If it was owned by the government, you were kind of a little bit comforted by the fact that they'd have to take you through the tribunal to kick you out. And we had a pretty good run, actually, and we made a real point of cleaning up the place and sort of letting everybody know we were there and making friends with the neighbours. And we had pretty good luck in as far as maintaining a good squat for a length of time. Yeah.
There was a big difference between the squats that we were involved in and a lot of the other squats that the other punks were involved in. A lot of punks squatted joints just for somewhere to fucking live and free cheese to them. Often they were drug fucked and just desperate, needed somewhere to live. Whereas we did it more as a political statement. You know, that housing is a right, not a privilege. And,
There doesn't seem to be much of a squatting scene around at the moment in Melbourne, as from what I remember in the 80s, in the late 70s, in the 70s and the late 70s, early 80s, the squatting scene was pretty big in Melbourne, but it's not as, I mean, corporations have bought up land and, you know, Telstra and, you know, Optus have built their, you know, high-rise buildings and that, and it's not as prevalent now, is it?
well, I wouldn't have a clue.
He lives in the country. But you're right. If it exists, it's not as obvious. That's for sure.
There was a lot of squats around St Kilda in the 80s. I used to go to them and see punk bands like Children of Sorrow, Arm the Insane, and play at these squats, you know, and you go and have a few beers, watch the band, and then go home, and then people that live there, you know.
Yeah, I know. It's culturally really exciting time, actually.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And I don't know what's going on. Like, housing has become like more of a problem than it was back in the 80s. You know, to keep hearing the stats or whatever. But I don't know why people are less likely to occupy an empty building. I don't know for what reason. I'm not quite sure.
Isn't it the reason that corporations have bought that land in the 80s? It probably was only worth 50 grand, but now it's worth $500,000. You know, is that why? I don't know.
Those pressures are real, but I also think that we were more likely, back in the day, we were less inhibited by authority and more likely to sort of take a chance and have a bit of an adventure along the way.
Yeah.
I think we were just a little bit more adventurous.
So what are your fond memories of the 80s hardcore punk scene in Melbourne? Tell us some of your fond memories, guys. Bands, anything, you know.
I love the fact that years ago there was a benefit gig, you know, like someone would need money, whether it was Animal Liberation, anti-uranium movement or whatever, and the punks would just rally and have a gig. So sell food for fuck all money.
There was also a lot of all ages gigs in the 80s.
Yeah, there was. And then often someone would organise a gig out in the suburbs, you know, not some scout hall or something like that.
Yeah.
They were some of the best gigs, you know, because not only were they good because they were just sort of something different, you'd attract other people to come in and check it out, and often they'd get involved.
Where does life find you guys now? I mean, you're not involved in the scene anymore. I mean, what do you since you survived that scene and, you know, the heavy days, the squatting scene, the punk scene, I mean, what are you guys doing now in your life?
My cynicism for this system hasn't changed, you know, like, you know, the old crass slogan, I'll make no subscription to your paradise, still stands. We've got 84 acres out couple of hours out of Melbourne. We're building a community.
The punk scene was an amazing experience in my younger years. The things I learnt from those times will never leave me. I'm stuck with them for the rest of my life. I started off at school fucking telling teachers to get fucked, and I'm still telling people to get fucked.
Thanks for having a chat to Jenny and everyone. Okay, thanks a lot, guys. Good on you.
Cheers, mate.
Okay, no worries. Cool.
Come live in a squad house, baby. Come live in a squad house, baby. At least do something to myself. Come live in a squad house, baby.